Slumber Party.
Apparently, I like the last slumber party of vocals is what I apparently like. Talk about if we're ever in Star Trek and have a holodeck. That's one of the programs I'm making.
Korthon sounds like a raging, belligerent hobo on the streets of Stockholm. Honestly, this is what this whole thing is about. I think it's great.
The tone totally reminds me of the greatest side of any album of all time, side 2 of Love It to Death by Alice Cooper. Yeah, I know, that's a feature, not a bug. You seem surprised. Feature, not a bug. I'm like, shit, are the vocals out of key? I don't know. Tune in.
Yeah.
I guess I like shitty vocals, is what I guess it comes down to.
Hey, this is Mike, Slater 42 Vinyl, doing another Amplified Assignments with Roger. No, over there. This happened kind of a couple times where we picked similar types of genres without knowing that we were going to give each other something similar like that. But in this case, we kind of picked Doom. The album that Roger gave me is a Bathory. This is Hammerheart. Yeah, we both have it. And the album I gave Roger is a band called Mansion. And yeah, we are going to talk about Bathory first. So Roger is going to tell me about the band, why he likes this record and why he assigned it to me. So yeah, go ahead and talk about the album a little bit.
I didn't do a good job for research on the band itself. Really, the band is one guy. It's always kind of been a one-man band, Korthon. He either had session musicians or he just did it himself. Very rarely played live. I think they got on my radar just it was the kind of stuff I was into whenever, in the 90s when I first heard them, I started getting into more, raw sounding stuff. This wasn't the first album I heard. I heard the one before it, which I almost considered assigning. I was torn between the two, and I was torn between something later that he did. His early stuff, which is just really proto black metal, and Hammerheart, which is more just doomy Viking metal. Blood, Fire, Death kind of bridges the gap between those two, and I really like it a lot. And I like a newer one. There was a newer 2-part one, Nordland 1 and 2, which I've listened to probably just as much as Hammerheart over the years. But I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to keep it simple. It's definitely the start here. Obviously, you knew the name, but I didn't think that was kind of music that was really ever in your wheelhouse. Or maybe you just didn't know that he recorded stuff like this. But I've loved this album and band for a really long time. I think he was tremendously talented. I mean, it makes me sad. He's been dead for, 20 years now, maybe. It's been a while. That was sad because I'd really love to see how he would have continued. One of my favorite bands is Dark Throne. I almost feel like they took the mantle from him of just we're going to be very prolific and we're just kind of do what we want to do ourselves and change directions sometimes and go back to this style sometimes. For me, that's what the Bathory discography is. I love this record a lot. I think it's very simple. I don't know. To me, his voice, the way he sings, the rhythm, I really like the rhythm of the vocals. He uses vocal rhythm really, really well. The first song, Shores of Flame, and then the last song, One Road to Asa Bay, they just have these epic solos that are just very emotional type of solo. It's like one of those ones you could just feel it coming out of him. And it's so good, so good. I would have loved to have seen him play live like that. He did a few times. Boy, that would have been, talk about if we're ever in Star Trek and have a holodeck. That's one of the programs I'm making. This is a Hall of Fame record for me, for a band that I really love. I think, I like all of his stuff, but it's a lot of it varies. And I was hoping you'd like it. I feel like I know, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I would guess the criticisms of it and any criticism I could think of, and I'm going to see if this is right. My reply will probably be, yeah, I know, that's a feature, not a bug. That's kind of probably what I'll think about the criticism of it. I'll be like, no, that's why I like it. Kind of. That's part of it. So,
Sure.
So when I gave this to you, you'd heard of Bathory, clearly. Were you familiar with this album? Were you familiar how this album sounded? Anything like that?
I had heard of the band Bathory, for a long time, obviously. I think we've always seen his albums. I never really knew what it sounded like, but I don't know if I ever really knew what genre it was. And I never really listened to it pretty much at all. So it was kind of cool that you gave it to me, actually, because it was a way for me to familiarize myself with a kind of a legendary band. These guys have been around for a long time. And just knowing that this was recorded in the 90s, yeah, I'd never really explored it. So it was kind of cool that you gave me the album and I was able to listen to it. I know that, you mentioned that this is kind of his doomish Viking metal era, and he had black metal before, and I really don't know what came after. I didn't listen to anything but this album. So this is Bathory to me, right? I don't even know what his other stuff really sounds like. So I wrote notes. Let's start with the negative on this album, the biggest negative. And it's fascinating to me this is the third album that you've given to me like this. This guy's vocals, he cannot sing in key. He is not singing in key. And it's so pervasive throughout the whole album. And I wanted to make sure I wasn't nuts. So I actually got a quote from a review on Metal Archives. And just so you know, this review gave the album a 100% rating. Like, this guy loves
Okay.
the album.
Okay. Okay.
But this is what he said about the vocals. He goes, from a strictly technical standpoint, most people would probably call this some of the worst singing they've ever heard. Korthon sounds like a raging, belligerent hobo on the streets of Stockholm, preaching on how Christianity raped the European culture. I'm sure some Pavarotti biographer could point out all the mistakes, bum notes, and times where the man is flat out of key. Isolated and taken out of context, this album, most would probably call the singing dreadful. And that's a review from somebody else, like not even me. Like, and they gave him 100%.
Feature, not a bug.
And that's one of the things that they talk about. You know, a lot of people in the reviews, they're like, you know, the emotion behind it, you know, his moaning and crying. It's, you know, it is kind of a feature, but musically, I really feel like this album could have benefited from really good vocals, or at least in tune vocals, because his vocal style, it's going to make or break this album for people, I think. And it has good reviews and just okay reviews. And I think it's the okay reviews are based on the songwriting, you know, and the sound of the album and stuff like that, and the melodicism on it. There's every song has like a melody in it that is kind of memorable. That sets the song apart, which I thought was really good. That's a compliment for the album. But the negative is definitely his vocals, and I can see where it's a feature, not a bug. But it's funny because you've given me 3 albums. You've given me Manila Road, Mark the Shark, who I like his vocals. I ended up liking them, but he is an acquired taste. Yeah. Then you gave me Faith No More, Chuck, which is awful. His vocals are just terrible, and that makes or breaks that album. I can't even listen to that album. And then you've given me this album, which is another guy who struggles. Like, you can hear when he's singing and moaning and groaning, and I'll play parts of the songs where it's just like, you're just like, ooh, it's like really bad. So I feel like it, even though it might be a feature, it's an annoyance to me. I have a real problem with singing out of key frequently for some reason, you know. And I don't know if he has different people doing the background vocals, because he has these choral vocals that are being sung in the background. Those seem to be, for the most part, in key and okay. If he didn't sing with those parts and he kept to his, you know, growling and stuff like that, or his raspy voice, that might have been better. Or if he just said, I'm gonna get a singer. So yeah, I really struggled with the vocals again. And it's funny because you have, and this isn't a knock on you, I don't know what this is, a criticism or what, but you have mentioned vocals to me about the albums that I've given you, you know, like, oh, I hate these vocals, I can't stand this person. But I haven't given you anything, not even close to something like this, where a singer technically can't sing.
But that's not even a thought that came through my mind. That was not something I had considered a criticism of it. Yeah. I guess I like shitty vocals is what I guess it comes down to. And I'm not saying that as a pejorative. I guess just like, I guess I vibe with that for whatever reason, because I don't ever think of things out of tune. Like, I don't really think of it that way. This is fair. And this is interesting. And I might consider this more in the future when giving you stuff, because, you know, again, we've talked about, you know, not wanting to piss the other person off. So
no, I'm not. And I'm not pissed off about it. When you had gave me the album, you said, oh, there's a thing about this album that I think you won't like. I'm not sure though. I thought for sure after listening to it the first couple times, I'm like, it has to be the vocals, because he is giving me another album with a vocalist who is struggling. And you mentioned that last song, that Asa song. Mm-hmm. He tries to sing high throughout that song. And oh my God, it is the second worst vocal performance on the album. There's another part where he just sings completely out of key too much, and it's just really awful. And I don't know. I mean, I just find it interesting that you like this, but then you'll complain and be like, oh, Horace vocals. And I think it's just aesthetically, maybe you don't like the pitch, but they're not singing out of key. You know, they're singing in key. They're singing properly, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But you like these other vocals that are objectively not right.
You've seen some of my favorite movies. Apparently, like, I like The Last Slumber Party of vocals is what I apparently like.
But, you know, there's a charm to it, and I guess there is a charm to some of this. Like Chuck, for example, I get why people might be like, oh, that's cute, or oh, this is like art, or oh, this is so different that, I'm glad somebody's doing something like this. I'm tired of people singing in key or something like that. The one thing that the album is it's epic. Every song is a statement. It's like big guitars, like the guitars are turned so way up. They drown out like a lot of the instruments. The distortion, I feel like there's like 3 or 4 layers of guitars. It's just super distorted, super heavy, super epic. And then I'm like, he really wants these vocals to hit. And that's why he has all these choirs and, multi-layered vocals for the choruses. But then he just can't do it. He just can't get there in some of these parts of these songs where I feel like it would have been a triumph if a good vocalist was in there just, nailing it. That's the main detractor for the album for me, is the vocals. The epicness of the music, the choir vocals, the choruses, all that stuff is great. The production isn't great. That's another problem with the album. It's just, it really is like a wall of sound at you. But like you said, that's probably intentional. You probably wanted to get that type of sound. Plus, it was recorded in the 90s. We listen to a lot of death metal that doesn't sound that great. But maybe that's what he was going for, that really raw, epic sound. And maybe these vocals, these moaning, maybe that's just what he was going for. And aesthetic wise, and maybe that's why, certain vocals don't appeal to you. It's just the aesthetics, not necessarily that they're out of key. Yeah, it's just not jibing with me. It's definitely not a feature for me. And it's about 50% of the album. The other 50% where he's doing kind of the growly vocals and stuff like that, it's totally fine. Again, the album is very doom metal. I think it's interesting that we both gave each other doom metal albums this time. I feel, most of the songs are mid-paced to slow. There's one song in here that has, like a driving riff that's a bit faster throughout the whole thing, but it's not super fast. There's not really any, really fast parts at all in the album.
I thought some of the parts, because I think a lot of it, for me, the way I would describe it, it almost sounds like some of the real crunchy riffs almost just sound like you have shitty speakers. Like they're just, your speakers are muffled and you're like, sorry about my crummy speakers. Like I feel like that's kind of the sound of it. And I thought you would really hate that.
I thought that was okay. I did notice that. And the production is, I think it can be an issue for some people. It's not necessarily the biggest problem with the album. I wish that was the only problem, honestly, or the only criticism I had. But yeah, the production could have been better, but I feel like it just kind of fit. I do have a little bit of a complaint about the production, but it's not the major problem. So the songs, Shores and Flames, really good song, really good opening track, gives you a good indication of what to expect. It's not the best song, but it's still good. Valhalla is another good song. The melody in it is cool. I like it. Lots of moaning in that one in the chorus, with the choir or choral vocals. But that's kind of the entire theme of all of the songs. They all have these choruses with these multi-layered choir vocals, kind of. It's all men's choir vocals, and it could just be him layered, but it kind of doesn't sound like him to me, unless he really is a good singer on the choral parts, and then he was choosing these kind of vocals, these kind of off-key, moaning, screaming type vocals for his own singing. I'm not sure. But Valhalla's good. I would kind of wish that song was a little bit shorter. That's another thing. Some of the songs do go on a bit long, but that's a super minor complaint. Baptized in Fire and Ice is probably my favorite song on the album. It really has like the best chorus, the most memorable song, and the choir part is really good on there because I just like how he's like baptized in fire, you know how it goes. It's really
Hmm.
cool because he's doing the growling part then, and then they do the choral part for the rest of it. It's really good. Father to Son. That song had kind of an awkward chorus in it, so it didn't kind of, it was almost like it was not put together right, or it was weird, but it's still an okay song, and it's one of the faster songs on the album. It has this really chugging riff that I was talking about. And so that's an okay song, but it also, you know, vocal wise, it might be the worst of all of the vocals on the album, you know, as far as him trying to sing and it mostly being off key or just off kilter a little bit. And he really pushes it and he just doesn't quite get there, you know, with those higher notes. Song to the Hall Up High is more like an interlude, just a couple minute song. It's okay. It's pretty much only him. Home of Once Brave, that might be the second worst vocal performance. He's trying so hard to reach those high notes on that song, and he just can't get there. He just can't get there, and it's like you can hear him straining. The chorus is decent, but overall just an okay song. And then Run Road to Asabe, it's the epic, it's 11 minutes, but right away he struggles with his vocals and he tries to sing high throughout that whole song. He's really just, pouring his heart out or his voice out or whatever. But his gruff singing in that's pretty good. But yeah, the clean vocals are a problem for me. My last point would be that the one thing about the songs is they do not deviate much once he starts. He picks a riff and he kind of that riff is the song throughout. Like every song has a unique riff, but it's pretty much the entire song over and over and over again. And then just him moaning and screaming and then that choral part, where it might change up a little bit. You did mention solos, but I actually don't recall many of the solos. I feel like I was going to say that I was like, are there any guitar solos? But there's kind of like these melodic sections where he's playing higher notes on the guitar, like a guitar solo, but it's not like a traditional solo, which is kind of cool,
the two songs I spoke of, you're right, there is, because I actually was looking for them today because I knew I wanted to mention the solos because I was kind of skipping around the record and I was realizing, I was like, half of these songs don't have them. Yeah. One or two have just kind of like a melodic section, like you said. I think it's really only the first and last song have just straight out solos. So yeah, those are the two. And both of those stand out to me as just, they're very epic and very emotional.
Right. Yeah, it's good. I like the music. And what carries me through the album, what makes me keep listening to it is the guitar tone, those multi-layered, highly distorted guitars, trudging drums, just everything is just kind of being, you're almost getting like beat over the head with it. It's like, it fills the room, when you turn it up. Just to wrap up then, I did like the album overall. I think the sound of it is great. The production is fine to me. It is a little bit lacking, but I don't think that that's a huge problem. The vocals are challenging. I did get kind of more used to them than I did with Chuck, and I don't know that I'd be able to listen to this album over and over again like I did recently. And I'd be curious what he sounds like on other albums, if he has the same style or not. So I think I would give this album probably 3 stars out of 5. The vocals really cut down on, it starts at a 5 out of 5. I mentioned that last time, but those vocals were harsh. So that's Bathory for me. Yeah, what do you think of my review?
I will say that as far as I know, because I think this is one of the things that was just known about him, he did all the vocal tracks on that album. Yeah. So I think if there are parts when you think are actually good sounding, then I think it is a choice.
Might be.
Yeah, I'm sure some of it's lack of ability and 2 of it is choice. So as far as I know, it was all him. I do now regret the particular album I chose. Knowing what I know now, I was almost just joking, thinking that I'd switch up today's and go grab Nordland, but I would not go subject you to more Bathory at this point in time. But I will say, since I think the last 2 albums he put out before he died, or was a 2-album set, it was called Nordland 1, and then there was Nordland 2 the following year. They're very, very similar in vibe to Hammerheart. The production is much better. I think the vocals are much better. I think, but maybe not. I don't know. I haven't listened to it super recently, but I thought
Yeah.
these vocals were good. At some point, even if you just check out a track just to see if you are interested in it, I think you may like those
I'll
two
check it
albums
out
more.
for sure. All right, so that's Bathory. We are gonna go to the second assignment, and the second assignment is Mansion. This is a weird band. They are a doom band as well. Music-wise, they're pretty traditional doom, I think. They have male and female vocals kind of back and forth. They do have some type of, like harmonizing, choral vocals sometimes. It's not the exact same as Bathory, but they definitely do that on the album. And I think the most unique thing about this band is I guess the shtick that they have, sort of like the theme of the band. They have taken a Finnish cult called, I believe the cult name was Kartona, and they have kind of taken on the persona of a cult and have written songs about what they know about this cult and how the cult was ran. And there's just a lot of songs on here about being in the cult, what it would be like, to be in a very highly religious cult. And there are also songs on here about, members, like what might happen if you wanted to leave the cult, so there's some really interesting lyrics about, like what would happen, what type of kind of torture, literally, that you might have to go through if you tried to leave the cult. And they kind of describe that scenario of, a man and a woman wanting to leave and the type of rituals or whatever they would be subject to if they wanted to do that. So I did mention when I gave you this album that it's a pretty disturbing album as far as lyric wise. I don't believe that they're really in the cult. I think they're just, kind of putting on these persona and writing songs around that. But I still think it's interesting. They're kind of singing like almost like they were in a choir, like they were preaching in some way. It's not, I guess, traditionally sung like maybe, you would think it would be. It's kind of more like hymns and stuff like that in a way. But the music is great. It's mostly doom metal. And the reason I wanted to give it to you, because I felt like it was a unique band. We haven't talked about a doom metal, like a traditional doom metal band yet, so I figured this would be interesting for you to listen to and just to see if you had the same vibe that I did while listening to it. I didn't think you knew the band, so when I mentioned it to you and what it was about, what were your initial thoughts? And maybe after you listened to it for the first time, were you just like, what the hell is this? Or were you like, oh, this is cool, I'm going to keep listening to this?
Yeah, so I had no first impression. Like you said, I had never heard of it. Whenever we recorded, I think it was on a Friday night. I listened to it like the next morning. Like, while I was sitting at my computer, I was listening to it and I was like, wow, I hate this so much. I go, this is so boring and so uninteresting. I don't listen to a ton of doom metal, but like some of that really like super slow, sludgy stuff, like the very early Cathedral or very early Paradise Lost, like it's sometimes some of it is like it's too slow, and that's kind of just how I felt the first time I listened to this. I was like, wow. And I remember you did talk about the gimmick because that's what I would call it. You
Yeah.
said shtick. I was the gimmick is what
Yeah.
was in my notes. For whatever reason, I sent it the link to it. I think the Bandcamp link to it to my buddy Luke that day, and I actually thought he might like it. I don't know why. And like I sent that to him just out of the blue, and I was like, hey, check this out. About an hour later, he was like, thank you for thinking me that's the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. And I'm like, wow. So that was like my first listen. That was day one. Then I looked him up, read their Wikipedia page, and I was like, okay. And then I went to like Metal Archives, and I'm seeing these reviews, and I'm like, what did you guys hear? So that's day one. Day two, funny enough, this is again not usually how I operate. It was like the next morning. I was up, just kind of doing some stuff, maybe playing Minecraft, or probably just being on forums and the internet and junk like that. Played it a second time, thinking to myself, I don't think I hate this. And I texted Luke again and I said, I listened to that a second time and I don't know, man, there might be something to that. And he was like, nope. And I was like, all right. Yeah. And then I started listening to it a few more times. So let me tell you, first of all, let me kind of take this out of order a little bit. Here's what I like least about this album. And it's funny. This is kind of sounds strange, but and I may even just argue with myself here. But what I like least is the gimmick. Like I immediately found it kind of irritating. You don't really have to read the lyrics because the lyrics are very audible. When you look at the song titles, you're like, oh, it's just the phrase that was said over and over again. Yeah, that's easy. Like it's very easy song titles to remember. But let me say this now. I love this record. I kept listening to it. I kept getting intrigued and I kept liking it more and more and more. And I don't disagree with what I said about the gimmick, but I do wonder if it would work without it. That's kind of the questions I've been asking myself lately. Because I'm not opposed to band with goofy gimmicks. We listen to a lot of bands with goofy gimmicks. The thing is it's always tongue in cheek. And I think this is played too straight. It makes you uncomfortable, but maybe that's the point. Because I think this album's great. I don't have much notes at all. And I'll talk a lot about it because I didn't really want to analyze this. I really didn't want to do the assignment. I've listened to this a bunch. And I'm like, no, I don't want to sit down and listen to this critically. I do not, because I am still in the process of enjoying it. So I just kept listening to it. I jotted down a few things, a few places where I think, a few things, don't forget to mention this. But probably my least favorite part of the album is maybe it's like a 3-minute interval where there's like some talking and it's kind of dead smack in the middle of the album. That part, I wish that was just not in it. That's really the time that it interferes with the listening, though, the gimmick, is I think that's really the only instance. I think what I like about this album is it's repeated just build up and it explodes and then it comes down and then it starts slowly building. It does it like 3 times in the album. Yeah. It builds and it explodes. And it's like, at first, I think when I first started, like maybe the 3rd or 4th listen, those parts where it explodes, I was like, yeah, I'm liking this. Why isn't the whole album more like this? When it gets a little more rockin'. But as I continued to listen to this album more and like it more, I realized that that's wrong. That's incorrect. I think it works really well as it does, the way it goes up and down. I say this a lot and I tend to overuse this cliche, but I really think with this album, it's very hard for me. I really don't give a crap about songs other than the songs by saying it, because this really feels like a piece of work. This feels like a movie. And that's not to say it's cinematic, because it's not cinematic at all. It feels like a movie because you're dropped into it. And it's just very kind of consuming. And it's very like just the way it drones and it like kind of just puts you in this rhythm. And then it builds and it builds. And you're like, oh, no. And then you're like, oh, it's emotional. It's a very emotional album. I like it a lot. I do. It's a good reminder. We've talked about this before. It's not like it used to be when we were kids and you listened to something 20 times and it grew on you. Nowadays with the choices that we have, the days of like, listening to something so many times are just, I'll listen to it once, maybe twice, that's it.
Yeah.
And you file it away. And, I think we've been doing this with this show is that it's made you listen to something a bunch of times. I don't listen to albums over and over again like that. Any of the first episodes we've ever done, I have not listened to any of those since then. Once I was kind of done, I was kind of done. Like some of them I'll come back to at some point, but some of them I'm done. So I'm not done with this record. I'm still working it. I just think this is really good. And it works in a lot of different places for me. It works like while being on the computer. It works while being in a swimming pool. It works just zoning out. Sometimes I'm amazed that you are not a stoner. This is an album to enjoy THC with. It really is.
Sure.
Like,
I'm sure.
like this is a great record, man. I really like it.
I cover his mouth, gaze into his eyes. The flesh shivers in desperation. You're in heat, you're filthy and vile. Dirty mind is soiled with temptation. What have I done? I will lose my soul. What have I done? I will lose my soul. What have you done? You will lose your soul. What have you done? You will lose your soul.
I like the interchange of the vocals a lot. There's a few parts where they go back and forth. That's always kind of my favorite, in duets, in any kind of music, in any kind of genre, when it's those duets where they're singing to each other. They do have several parts of it like that where they're interacting with each other. I like both of the vocal performances. I think they're both pretty good. They're very memorable. They're loud. They're upfront. They're very audible. So like I said, you don't need to read the lyrics. And the music's so low key that it ends up being very vocal forward until it's not. I would say right now, I would give this 4 stars. And in the future, who knows? That might be its final rating. It could grow. So I like this a lot. I was skeptical. Nowadays, the first time you listen to it, you don't like it. You're done with it. You got a to listen to pile over there. But, sometimes it doesn't happen on the first try. Sometimes it's a slow burn. And yeah, I dig this record. I'm going to continue to listen to it. And, I guess that's about it. You seem surprised.
Honestly, this is what this whole thing is about. I think it's great. But yeah, this is awesome. And I totally agree about listening to stuff more than once. That is a struggle. I think part of that, and my theory now, about that is, and it's interesting that you almost had the opposite of what I'm about to say, is that at this point, I think that we know what we like to hear. I think more often now we're going to hear it on the first or second listen. You're going to be like, okay, these are things that I like and they're in this music. And now I think I can give this more of a chance, listen to it more than a few times and get into it. But yeah, it's interesting that you can discover something or be forced to listen to something like this. And, your immediate reaction is there's nothing in here that is intriguing to me or that's interesting. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to have to give this another listen because I have to have an opinion about it. And I want to be able to talk to you about it for at least a few minutes. I feel the same way, like the Bathory stuff or even the Faith No More. Faith No More is a really good example because I was really not enjoying listening to that album, but I did find things that I liked about it over time, being kind of forced to listen to it. Same thing with Bathory, even though the vocals I had a problem with, I found a lot of things that I liked just by repeated listens. I think this is the first album that I think you really, really liked. Everything else you were just like,
I agree.
this is fine. I enjoyed it, or no, this isn't for me and I hated it.
There's one note I didn't mention. It's one of this tone setting early on when it starts. In the first song, this like organ comes in and it comes in real soft. The tone totally reminds me of the greatest side of any album of all time, side 2 of Love It to Death by Alice Cooper. And it reminds me of that organ sound. It creeps in real eerily. I thought maybe on like, I don't know, the 20th listen, like I heard that little eerie part coming in and I was like, wow, this really sets the tone. And they don't come back to that sound very often on the record, but early on it just sneaks in. It's a great part.
Judgment of the Lord. There's no mercy at all. He's done with your days. Your name's been erased. There's no mercy at all. He's done with your days. Your name's been erased. Second death is upon you. You will cease to exist in His grace. Earthly life was a failure. Second death is your punishment.
And the other note I had is that I said it ends very strong.
Yeah.
The album ends on a high note. Like it ends really strong, I think.
It's kind of a haunting record. I mean, haunting is, I think, a good word as well. The one part I wanted to mention when you mentioned the duets, discussing parts that you really like on the album, I think they do a really good job of continually doing that, but not doing it too much, because too much of that, I think, would have been, okay, that's your thing now, and you're just doing it over and over and over again.
I think it's paced really well. So yeah, I agree. They don't go to any well too often.
Right.
Praise of God.
it seems like, in this cult, the females are the leaders, and you can
Hmm.
tell that kind of dynamic of, her vocals are strong, and she's, saying a lot of the aggressive things. And yeah, the gimmick, I think I'm interested in it. I think it's interesting. But yeah, this is actually really, really cool. I'm so glad that you came around on the
I'm
album and you enjoyed it. I think that's great.
I'm glad you gave it to me.
Awesome. All right, so we are gonna talk about our next picks. We're gonna do some non-metal stuff. It's gonna be more, rock alternative, whatever it is. It's just not gonna be heavy metal.
I don't know if you know who this person is. Again, I always check the Discogs. You don't have it, so I assume you don't know it. 2002, third full-length album called Dyed in the Wool from Shannon Wright.
Mm.
There's nothing in her catalog I would not recommend. This decision was somewhat chosen on what I had on vinyl. Most of her later stuff is like released only on this French label, and it's kind of pricey. You got to pay import prices for it for her last like 6 or 7 albums. I used to have most of them on CD, and I lost all of those in the Great Basement Flood.
Oh,
So,
no.
so I only have a couple of her on albums. I would like to get some more, but this was one I had to pick up because this is one of my favorites. Yeah, there's maybe one I could like maybe more, but based on what I had on vinyl, I love it. It's great. It's a Hall of Fame record for me. I hope you like it. Now I'm worried about the vocals. I'm like, shit, are the vocals out of key? I don't know. Tune in.
All right. Well, I didn't think this was going to happen for the one that I was going to give you because we had our discussion about power pop. I kind of didn't want to expose myself to the potential of just you slagging an album that I love. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to give you Jellyfish. This is Spilt Milk.
I think I know someone who swears by this band, but I'll have to double check.
Oh, good.
So.
Okay, so get your opinions, and then maybe this is something that you'll dig too. I was gonna say a few things here. This is Queen. This is the Beatles. This is glam. This is very 70s in that era, late early 70s. Incredibly melodic, tons of harmonies. It's a varied album. The thing you might think after the first listen or two is, oh, they're just, copying all these other bands. And kind of in a way they are, but it's more inspired, I think. Beach Boys is another band that you'll think of when listening to this, but it's very power pop. Incredible harmonies, incredible choruses. After the first couple listens, even if you don't like the songs, you're going to be like, okay, that was a hit. That could have been a single, things like that. This album is very well respected in the power pop circles, but this album is kind of like the album that they're known for. This album just came out on vinyl this year, I think, early this year or late last year for the first time in forever. Copies of this were going for hundreds of dollars because it's a very well sought after album. It came out in 1993, so came out in the 90s, which it doesn't sound like it's a 90s album at all.
So I just cheated. I have never heard this album.
Okay.
But when I saw the first album, Belly Button, I'm like, oh, yes, this is the band I'm thinking of.
Okay.
And I have heard this, and it's been a very long time ago, and I thought I liked it, but that's all I really remember about it. I did hear the first one, and I thought I liked it because a friend of mine swears by this band.
I hope I could strike lightning twice here. That's Jellyfish. You're getting that.
Check it out.
Spilt Milk. And I hope you like it. And until next time, like, subscribe, comment. I was going to do that at the beginning and I forgot. But please do that. That's cool when people do that. I enjoy any comments and likes and whatever subscriptions that we get. This is episode 8. I don't think I mentioned that. We're already on 8, which is cool. Yeah, that'll end Amplified Assignments episode 8.